Hello, and welcome to our presentation of Understanding the Proposed Royal Crest Project. We are giving this presentation today to help residents prepare for our annual town meeting, which will occur Tuesday, May 17th at 6:30 p.m. at the high school. We've received several questions in advance of this meeting. We will do our best to address as many of them as possible during the presentation of our slides today. Some of them we will address in an FAQ that will be released after this presentation, and we will individually respond to each resident that sent us an email. Thank you for participating in this process. I want to introduce those that are there with us today. We have Laura Bates, our Select Board Chair, Suzanne Egan, our Town Council, Jean Enright, our Planning Director, Eitan Goldberg, who is the Chair of the Planning Board, myself, Melissa Rodriguez, the Town Manager, and Andrew Shapiro, who is the Director of Community and Economic Development. All right, we're going to get started. So where is Royal Crest located? It is 1 in 28 Royal Crest Drive. It's comprised of 2 parcels combining for a total of 76 acres. It sits along Route 114 across from Merrimack College and at the confluence of Route 125. The property is approximately 1.5 miles southeast of 495 and 2 miles south of downtown. Today, there's 588 units, which were constructed in the 1970s. Approximately 1,600 total residents live there, with 135 units leased by Merrimack College. Of the population currently at Royal Crest, approximately 850 of them are college students, and they are housed throughout the 76 acres. At the time of the fiscal impact report, 213 school-aged children lived at the Royal Crest Apartments. But this number has fluctuated over the years, from as few as 160 to as many as 260. This property is currently the town's highest property taxpayer at $1,594,938, and it costs the town between $2,069,136 and $3.1 million annually in services. The project as proposed would be a 40B of 385 units, with 97 of those being deemed affordable. All of those units would be included on our SHI, Subsidized Housing Inventory. There will be 439 multifamily units. 35 units would be over 55 active living. 199 would be townhomes. There would be 206 units for student housing, for total residential units of 1,264. There will be 69,873 square feet of ground floor retail, a 102 key hotel, 108,500 square feet of office space, 46.5 acres of open space, and 559,000 square feet of parking structure, plus additional surface parking. This program has been reduced by over 20% since originally proposed, with reductions in units, heights, and setbacks. We did have a question come in from Christina56@AOL.com asking why the builder is not considering condos for 55 and over. The project does currently call for 35 active living units for people ages 55 and up. Currently, those are planned as rentals as opposed to ownership units. Thank you for your question, Christina. This slide talks about the building metrics. Currently, Royal Crest makes up 806,668 square feet. When the completion is done at the end of all of the phases, including all of the residential, retail, townhouse, clubhouse, hotel, and office space, as well as the structured parking, there will be approximately 2.7 million square feet occupied. This slide speaks to the site metrics and talks about the floor area ratio. I like to think of the floor area ratio as the relationship between the area of your house to your land lot. For instance, you have a 1,600 square foot house on a half-acre lot. The existing Royal Crest has a 0.24 floor area ratio. Under the Master Development Plan, there will be a 0.64 floor area ratio. When you include the parking structures, it will be a 0.81 floor area ratio. This slide tells us a little bit about the site plan. you can see when you look at the different areas where the different aspects of the site are going to be laid out. The 199 townhouses are to the left. Below that is student housing, which has surface parking, 206 units with 824 beds. Market rate multifamily is in the middle of the site. Above that is the trails with vegetated buffer. Over 55 is to the right. Offices are to the very far right, and the multifamily 40B is towards the front of the site. You can see the town green as well as the hotel right along Route 114. There's close to 70,000 square feet of retail dispersed throughout the ground floor levels of buildings throughout the entire site. This site depicts the proposed building heights. There are no 5-story buildings proposed for this site. This tallest building would be the hotel at 75 feet. All other buildings proposed are below 70 feet. Currently, there are 49 structures on site, each approximately 40 feet. As proposed, this project would have approximately 44 buildings, including the parking structures. This slide shows us what the open space in the site would be like. Over 46 acres, approximately 61% of the site, would remain as open space. There would be a 3-acre town green surrounded by dense plantings and mature trees. A 1.5-mile walking and biking path that circulates around the site. All of the trees and forested area buffering the rear and sides of the site will be preserved. And most mature trees fronting Route 114 will be preserved. An additional 800-plus trees will be planted throughout the site. Kyle Rapucci sent us a question. Who will provide upkeep to the grounds in this complex? Our neighborhood has a children's playground that was installed by the developer, but the town does not maintain it. Who will maintain the grass, the cleanliness of the place, trash receptacles, sidewalks, paved areas? What revenue would be used for that maintenance? It's a great question, Carl. In this project, the town would not be accepting any of the streets or sidewalks. The developer and management group would be responsible for all of the upkeep and maintenance within this development. The next slide talks about parking. There will be a total of 2,677 parking spaces between structured and on-street parking. That's 1.6 parking spaces per unit across all of the residential, and 5.3 parking spaces per square foot of retail. There's 153 dedicated parking spaces for dormitories. Ron Behara, we received your question about parking difficulties, and hopefully this slide helps. Chris Spy, we were reaching out to you regarding some of your other Green Initiative questions, which were great, but we wanted to answer your question as far as EV charging stations. All of the parking areas within the master plan are required to provide hardware installation of level 2 electric charging stations for a minimum of 10% of required parking spots. Based on the number of parking spots being provided by the proposed development, there will be 268 EV charging stations, and that is required by the development agreement. Thank you, Chris. This slide lays out the different district concepts throughout the site. There are 4 distinct districts, all having district characteristics and uses. This is a developer's rendering of the town center. This is a developer's rendering of the town center hotel. Again, 102 keys. This is the Mill District, which would have market rate housing as well as the 40B affordable housing. This is the Campus District, which would have the residence halls for Merrimack College. This is the Village area. It's located in the upper left corner of the site. It will include the 199 wood frame townhouse units, as well as 2 market rate multifamily buildings. Now we're going to show you a 3D walkthrough that was produced by the developer.
Complex is an opportunity to bring a new vibrancy and a new sense of community to this prominent site in North Andover. Through 2 years and dozens of meetings with neighbors, town officials, and North Andover residents, we have arrived at a vision for the 76-acre parcel that creates 4 distinct districts, each with its own character, and each meticulously designed to be walkable, welcoming, and visually consistent with the buildings and public spaces that make North Andover a great place to live. The 4 districts, moving from east to west, are the Mill District, the Town Center District, the Campus District, and the Village District. Arriving at the intersection of 125 and 114, we see the first district in the new development, the Mill District. The buildings in this district are all set back at least 70 feet from the property line and derive their architectural character from the historic mills of the area, such as the 2 Davis and Ferber mill buildings right here in North Andover. The long, brick-framed buildings feature high ceilings and large oversized windows, which allow for great loft-style apartments inside. The 70-foot setback from Route 114 allows us to preserve several existing specimen trees, including tall pines, maples, and oaks. It also allows the planting of new trees and an understory of native grasses and shrubs and rain gardens, which will help with natural stormwater management. A multimodal walking and cycling path meanders among the mature trees, providing a safe and pleasant route for pedestrians to walk to and from the Town Center District. The heart of the Town Center District is a large town common. This common is framed on 3 sides by commercial buildings with apartments above to the east, a hotel to the north, and a student apartment building on the west. The commercial building features a prominent clock tower which provides a vertical marker to signal the primary entry to the new Royal Crest. The base of this building features small commercial shops and above 3 floors of apartments. The Neo-Georgian architecture in the town center is reminiscent of the predominant buildings of 18th century New England. The town green is the heart of the neighborhood, designed to be a place for people to come together. A large oval lawn will host Sunday picnics, games of catch, friendly gatherings, and movie nights. The paths around the green offer places to sit and relax in the natural woodland, as well as areas to lounge in the sun with a good book or a cup of coffee. The northern edge of the park includes lush rain gardens, beautifully planted to provide year-round interest and engineered to collect and treat stormwater. This edge is also anchored by a festival street, which can be closed for special events, fronted by a new hotel. Like the rest of the Town Center District, the hotel draws its architectural inspiration from historic New England precedents, including the Hanover Inn, the Andover Inn, and the Viking Hotel in Newport. The western edge of the town common is framed by the Campus District, where the 2 wings of the new apartment building are connected by a monumental archway, which opens to an interior courtyard. This 4-story building draws its architectural character directly from residence halls of 2 of New England's most storied universities, Massachusetts Hall at Harvard and Connecticut Hall at Yale. To the northeast of the Town Center District is the Village District. This district features 199 3-story townhomes overlooking a long, linear neighborhood park. The park will have open lawns, gardens, playgrounds, and seating areas for residents to enjoy. Underneath this beautiful park is a large stormwater detention system that will help store large volumes of stormwater during heavy rain events. The attached townhomes lining this park are inspired by historic New England residential precedents, single-family and multifamily homes that are characterized by gabled ends, front porches, clapboard siding, and sloping roofs with tight eave lines. The porches of these townhomes front directly onto the primary streets in the district and become a great place to build community. The small front yards and sidewalks are friendly and inviting not only to the residents but also to neighbors and visitors, making the entire district welcoming for an evening stroll. Off of the main streets, side streets and alleys provide direct garage access for resident parking. Walking out of the Village District and crossing the street, we come to one of Royal Crest's most significant features, its preserved woodlands. Altogether, over 23 of the 76 acres of the Royal Crest property will be devoted to preserved woodlands. Most of this area is along the perimeter of the site, which creates lush, thick green buffers between existing neighbors and the new construction. This is one of those green buffer areas. Located at a natural low point on the site amid existing forested wetland areas, This new 4.5-acre constructed wetland is designed to absorb excess stormwater and treat it through natural biofiltration. This area will also be a public open space amenity, complete with a multi-use path, hiking trails, and boardwalks for exploring nature. The 4 districts of the new Royal Crest are all united by a pedestrian-oriented, walkable, naturalized landscape. This landscape, combined with the richly detailed, historically inspired architecture and an exciting mix of residential, commercial, academic, and hospitality uses, makes the new Royal Crest a great community for everyone in North Andover to enjoy.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Jean Enright, who will walk us through the Royal Crest process so far.
Thanks, Melissa. Let's first review what is happening at town meeting. Article 28 proposes an amendment to the zoning bylaw by adding Article 19, Mixed-Use Overlay District. A vote to authorize zoning would allow Royal Crest to be redeveloped pending Planning Board Development Project Plan Review and Plan Approval. This article requires a simple majority vote of town meeting. Article 29 proposes to amend the zoning map to locate the mixed-use overlay district. The zoning map would be updated to reflect amended zoning bylaw pending approval of Article 28. This also requires a simple majority vote at town meeting. So how did we get here? A zoning working group was established in October of 2020. Members included Richard Valancourt, a select board member, Eitan Goldberg, and John Simons, as well as Aaron Preston from the planning board members. And staff consisted of myself, the planning director, Andrew Shapiro, director of community and economic development, and Suzanne Egan, town council. The zoning working group held bi-weekly meetings. They reviewed existing residential 5 zoning for the Royal Crest parcels, reviewed zoning bylaw for types of districts and procedures for permitting new developments, including the Osgood 40R Smart Growth District, site plan review special permit process, and special permits for multifamily developments. The zoning working group reviewed a number of iterations of a draft bylaw and then met with the developer team to review the draft mixed-use overlay bylaw. The draft was then ready for the planning board review. And now I'll turn this over to Eitan Goldberg to discuss the zoning amendments in more detail.
Thank you, Jean. And to pick up where Jean left off, the planning board has held many meetings over the last 2 years, as well as public hearings about these zoning amendments, and now they're coming before town meeting. The 2 articles that are coming before town meeting, the first one amends the zone, adopts the zoning bylaw regulating the master development plan and establishing a permitting process. So that's what creates this project, or potential for this project. And the second article is a zoning map amendment that creates the mixed-use overlay district, shows all the uses and structures on the map, and amends the zoning map that we have here in town. So the second one is more of a function of the first, and we'll be voting on them separately, but they work in tandem to create this potential new zoning district at Royal Crest. The processing for permitting. So if the town meeting approves the zoning articles, the zoning bylaw then adopts a master development plan, which regulates the density, setbacks, landscaping, street layout, parking, and other development criteria. All the uses and structures in the overlay district must be consistent with the master development plan adopted by town meeting. This is a little bit different than how we normally do zoning bylaw articles. Usually what happens is that someone has an idea for what they may want to do, or either on a parcel or for an area of land or for different places where we're going to do a zoning bylaw, a change or a new zoning bylaw. That bylaw just says what uses are kind of allowed and generally what restrictions there are, but doesn't really lay out the actual fully developed plans. For this bylaw, we went with a more comprehensive bylaw that really shows where everything is and really regulates what can be done in the future if town meeting adopts this article. So it's really going to be up to the town to decide, is this the project we want? If so, then the zoning bylaw is for you, because it says all of the uses, all of the structures, all of the heights, all of the setbacks, really everything's included here, and the development going forward really can't stray from that. All of the uses and structures are subject to development plan review and approval by the planning board. So what is the master development plan? Well, in essence, it's the project that's being voted on. It's the dorms and the hotel and the multi-family housing, the 40B component. It's the office and retail use. It's the townhomes, and really all of the entire project. It's the setbacks, how far these buildings are from the street. It's the height requirements and the density and floor area ratio that Jean was talking about earlier. It's the parking requirements. Really everything that you can think of that is part of a plan is regulated in pretty finite detail. Any project built under this zoning must adhere to the master development plan being presented. If not, then it may require the developer to come back to town meeting if there are significant or material changes to what was previously approved by town meeting. So if the project is approved at town meeting, if this zoning is approved, it doesn't mean that shovels go right into the ground. Then the next phase of steps comes into play before building permits are issued. If the project is approved at town meeting and the zoning bylaws pass, then the development project plan phase kicks in. So what the developer would need to do is submit development project plans to the town planning board. These are very similar to what we now get for site plan review, special permits. What happens is those plans are subject to third-party review, so peer reviewers that the town hires, that are paid for by the developer, but town hires them and chooses them, and reviewed by other boards, by commissions, by departments here at in the town, so such as the Public Works Department or the Building Department, the Planning Department, Fire, Police, all get to see the plans, review them, make comments. Our third-party reviewers get to review, make comments, and then the Planning Board will hold public hearings to review the development project plan to make sure that it's consistent with what was in the master plan and the zoning bylaws. So the buildings need to be in the same places, the uses need to be the same, the heights need to be the same as presented in what was presented and accepted by the town. And there's a process for that for each different kind of area in which the developer is building. Only the mixed uses or residential uses are allowed in the district. All uses must include a residential component. The residential use is a structure or structures containing dwelling units. So in each of the different development areas, there are residential structures and components. A mixed-use development is defined as a development project containing a mix of residential uses and non-residential uses, which could include commercial, institutional, industrial, or other uses. Non-residential uses allowed generally include office, retail, restaurant, recreational, and other uses associated with residential. We did get a question from Kathy Phillips, and says, will retail businesses include permit drive-through fast food establishments? And the answer to that is no. Drive-throughs are not allowed as part of this zoning bylaw. There are dimensional and density requirements, maximums that have been established, maximum coverage, including buildings, driveways, and parking areas. A minimum amount of open space has been delineated, and open space in the plan you saw earlier has been specifically delineated where it's going to be and how much. Maximum floor area ratio. The numbers and types of dwelling units has been established, the number of dormitory units and beds, as well as building heights. Those will all be part of the plan that everyone will see at town meeting, and the numbers Melissa discussed earlier. Now, if something is different. This is planned to be at full build out an 8 to 10 year project for how long it would take to build. So some things, theoretically could change over time in what a developer wants to do. However, they are strictly limited to what they can do by the approval of town meeting and by the master development plan. So if there is a proposed change, something that is different than what has been adopted, if it's a very minor inconsistency, something very small, that could be allowed without issue. Something that's deemed an insubstantial change, something that doesn't change necessarily a use or a significant, something significant type of building, a location of a building, things like that. That could be reviewed by the planning board, and after a public hearing, the planning board could make a change. Anything of any substance, anything that is significantly material, anything that is strikingly different than what is in the approved plan would have to go back to town meeting for approval. The goal of this bylaw is to really get what the plan is and hold any development to that plan, because that's what the town approved. And I think we'll go to town council now to talk about how changes to the zoning act have impacted this proposed bylaw.
Thank you, Eitan. Yes, so in 2020, the Massachusetts Zoning Act was amended to change the quantum of vote necessary to adopt certain zoning amendments. Typically, we're used to seeing a zoning amendment requiring a 2/3 vote by town meeting. The recent amendments to the Zoning Act now only require a simple majority from town meeting to adopt a zoning bylaw that allows multifamily housing or mixed-use developments as of right or by special permit in an eligible location. The planning board has done an analysis and reviewed the law and the zoning amendments and has made a determination that this project requires a simple majority vote because it meets the requirements under the Zoning Act. The bylaw creates a zoning district that allows multifamily housing and mixed-use developments as of right and by special permit. And additionally, Royal Crest is located in an area of concentrated development. We have obtained from the State Regulatory Authority, DHCD, an advisory opinion stating that Royal Crest is located in an eligible location, which then means that the zoning bylaw is subject to only a simple majority vote by town meeting to pass. There's additional changes to the Zoning Act in 2020, and that is that certain communities, MBTA communities, must adopt a MBTA community zoning district. North Andover is an MBTA community. It has the obligation, it is required to adopt a zoning district that allows, as of right, multifamily housing that is suitable for families, is not age restricted, and is of a reasonable size. The district has a minimum density requirement of 15 units per acre. This is set forth in General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A of the Massachusetts Zoning Act. The State Regulatory Authority issued draft compliance guidelines earlier this year. Those guidelines are being reviewed by the regulatory along with all of the comments submitted from the various communities and interest groups that are interested in the development of housing in Massachusetts. The final guidelines will clarify whether the Royal Crest Mixed-Use Overlay District satisfies the town's obligations as an MBTA community. We can look at what the bylaw is going to create and look at it in terms of whether it meets those requirements. We know that the zoning bylaw allows, as of right, multifamily housing. It's suitable for families. There is no requirement that any of the facilities are age restricted, and it is on over 70 acres of land with a density of over 15 units per acre. When the final guidelines are issued, then North Andover will have more clarity as to whether or not this meets our obligations under the MBTA zoning district requirements. Now, I'm going to turn this over to Andrew Shapiro, the Director of Economic and Community Development, to discuss the project impacts.
Thank you, Suzanne. So as Suzanne just said, now I'll take you through the projected impacts that the proposed project will have on the town if the zoning bylaw amendment is approved by town meeting. To better understand the methodology and findings, several studies were provided to the town by consultants hired by the developer of the project. These studies were then peer-reviewed by the town's own consultants to confirm accuracy, methodology, and to provide more clarity. Every issue that the studies covered, as well as the studies and peer-reviewed content themselves, were discussed in great detail with the planning board during public meetings. Each of these studies and analyses can be viewed by the public on the town's Royal Crest website, which can be accessed from the town's homepage. And as you can see, topics covered included the traffic study, which was submitted and peer-reviewed by the town's consultant, a preliminary stormwater management plan submitted and peer-reviewed by the town's consultant, fiscal impact analysis and peer-reviewed, which was peer-reviewed by the town's consultant, a school capacity study submitted and peer-reviewed by the town's consultant, phasing and construction management plans, stormwater drainage and wetlands memorandum, utilities and infrastructure memorandum, access, circulation, and parking plans, open space, density and dimensional analysis, water capacity study completed by the town's consultant, and a preliminary town-wide traffic analysis. So to better understand the methodology and findings in the peer-reviewed traffic study, note that it reviewed 10 intersections in the project area. Daily traffic counts were taken in 2019, and that's obviously pre-COVID. A projection into 2027 showed increases of between 2.6 and 6.1% in the amount of traffic generated, depending on the day and time. This includes traffic specific to the project, as well as other established demands for the area. It takes into consideration the planned improvements to Route 114, which we will cover very soon, and a level of service analysis that shows that the level of service for the roadway will stay the same or improve at 8 of the 10 studied intersections. Level of service relates to the ability of a given road to handle the number of vehicles expected to be generated by traffic coming to the area. The town, planning board, and state have and will continue to work extensively with the project proponent on mitigation measures that can both monitor the real impact of traffic in the area as a result of the project and provide potential further relief in the form of roadway and intersection improvements. We'll get more into that information later in the presentation as well. So this chart shows existing, net new, and total estimated trips that are expected to be generated as a result of the proposed redevelopment of the Royal Crest property. As you can see, daily weekday and peak hour morning trips are expected to roughly triple. Weekday evening peak hour will more than double. And Saturday daily trips see the largest increases with 6 and 4 times as many new trips generated. Keep in mind as you look at this that this information has been peer reviewed and agreed to by the town's traffic consultant, and that there are traffic mitigation efforts at these that given these increases, that the level of service for the roadway will stay the same or improve at 8 of the 10 studied intersections, and that further traffic mitigation efforts will be implemented. More details on that to come. I'll also note that the highest percentage increase was the Saturday daily with a 6.1 times increase, and that is primarily due to the fact that this project introduces more commercial development to this site. So now we'll cover the specifics of MassDOT's Route 114 improvement project, which is separate from the proposed redevelopment of the Royal Crest property. It includes a 2.2 mile roadway reconstruction between Waverly Road and Willow Street, the Mill Road intersection in North Andover. It includes roadway widening, traffic signal improvements at intersections, continuous sidewalk and bicycle accommodations that are separated from vehicular traffic, a shared use path, along the full length of the corridor. 7 existing traffic signals will be upgraded, and 2 additional intersections will become signal controlled. Those include the intersections of Route 114 at Royal Crest Drive and Merrimack College and Hillside Road, for a total of 9 signalized intersections. Traffic signals will be interconnected and will utilize adaptive signal control, which automatically adjusts signal operations to optimize traffic flow based on real-time vehicle demand data collected by the system. Project also includes a culvert replacement, drainage improvements, utility relocations, and landscaping elements. And while MassDOT and the developer have communicated, these projects are independent. Now we're just going to show some images of renderings of that project. So as you can see here, this is Turnpike Street in front of Merrimack College. Royal Crest is on the top of the page. And you'll see a new intersection that has been created with 4 crosswalks, fully signalized, and a new entrance into Merrimack College. Some highlights, just to zoom in a little bit here on that intersection. There'll be a new traffic signal installation, a new Merrimack College access, reconfigured Royal Crest access, a Route 114 shared use path on the south side, which you can see bordered by trees and landscaping, and a Route 114 sidewalk on the north side. Here's another view further down the street where the project intersects with the Route 125 bypass. And once again, you'll see new signalized intersection with improved crosswalks, pedestrian accommodations, traffic signals, and entrance exit into the Royal Crest property. Separate from any mitigation that might be required of the developer by the planning board, the development agreements, which we will discuss later in the presentation, as well as MassDOT's Route 114 improvements project, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, otherwise known as MEPA, will be triggered by this project. MEPA is a uniform system of environmental impact review to reduce the potential for harm to the environment from certain development, construction, or other projects. It was established as a state law in the 1970s. And as I said before, MEPA will be triggered for this project, including needing an environmental impact report. MEPA, working in conjunction with MassDOT, will do a full traffic review as part of their permitting process and a public hearing, and typically requires developers to perform additional traffic mitigation. In addition to everything we've already discussed, the town also hired traffic engineering firm Vanass and Associates to assess the cumulative impact of recently constructed developments, permitted but not yet constructed, along with the Royal Crest project. The purpose of the study was to assess existing travel times along major travel routes within the town and predict future travel times with planned development within the town. In terms of data collection, we looked at travel time data, which was collected in April of 2022 after the school vacation week during both peak and off-peak traffic volume periods. A minimum of 4 travel runs were completed along each roadway segment. Travel times per directions were averaged and included delays encountered along the travel route. For future conditions, in terms of a 7-year planning horizon in 2029, that included development projects, including Avalon, North Andover Mills, 505 Sutton Street, a residential project being done by Minco, 1600 Osgood Street, the Amazon project, Princeton, North Andover, which is mixed use, and the Royal Crest redevelopment. The background traffic growth rate taken into consideration, independent of these projects, is 1%. Planned roadway improvements along Route 125 and Route 114 were included. So the results: travel times between Route 114 and Main Street are predicted to increase by 30 seconds. Travel times between Main Street and Route 125 are predicted to increase by 30 seconds. Travel time between Route 28 and Route 114 are predicted to increase by 45 seconds. Travel times between Great Pond Road and Industrial Road are predicted to increase by 1 minute, 30 seconds. Travel times between I-95 and Haverhill Street are predicted to increase by up to 30 seconds. Travel times between Haverhill Street and Route 125, the Andover bypass, are predicted to increase by up to 45 seconds. Travel times between Route 125, the Andover bypass, and the Middleton Town Line are predicted to increase by up to 30 seconds. So we had a number of questions related to traffic that came in from various residents. So I hope that these slides answer many of your questions. So just to again sort of summarize, we have the Route 114 project, which is going to handle a lot of traffic and roadway improvements along the corridor. We have MIPA, which is going to require additional traffic mitigation. We have various studies that we've looked at that have been peer-reviewed and analyzed, and we'll continue to do that as required by the development agreements, which will be covered in a few minutes. And we will also individually answer the questions that have been posed by various residents regarding traffic on an individual basis and post them to the website as well in more specificity. So there are several things the town can do to continue to study and mitigate for any increases in traffic that result after or during the construction of the proposed project. These are just some of those ideas, some of which will be addressed in a bit more detail when we bring up the development agreements later in this presentation. So what are those? Scope broadening. So how would intersection work outside of the project scope mitigate traffic at the project site? So if we look further out at different intersections throughout town, what can we be doing in those locations to ease the burden of certain traffic issues? Study of and changes to intersection control. So we can look at how lights and signals are functioning and if there can be any improvement there. New technology. Currently, intelligent traffic signal control exists, but technology continues to improve. To the extent that it does, we'll definitely try to integrate more of that and work with our consultants on being able to bring those to bear, as well as analysis of driveway spacing and sightlines. Now I'm going to talk about North Andover's affordable housing stock and affordable housing in North Andover in general. The Subsidized Housing Inventory, SHI, is a calculation of the percentage of deed-restricted affordable housing units in a community. The town's goal is to have its SHI exceed and stay above 10%. Currently, the town's SHI is at 8.7%. That represents 949 units, and that's per the Department of Housing and Community Development. The town estimates, based on 2020 updated census numbers, that percentage to actually be closer to 8%. This is recalculated after each census. The town estimates growth in order to prepare for recalculations and in order to take steps to maintain the 10%. Introduction of different housing types best serve differing resident needs. And what that means basically in terms of the Royal Crest project is we have multifamily residential, we have townhomes, we have homes that are serving a population of active older adults, and we want to make sure that those folks have opportunities to live in all types of different housing types. It creates more housing stock, and hopefully in the long run, it brings down the level of, it raises the level of affordability and makes it more accessible to more types of people in town. So now, Royal Crest's impact on Chapter 40B housing. As proposed, this project would bring the town in compliance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40B. Chapter 40B is a state statute which enables developers to build affordable housing developments without complying with local zoning bylaws or any other land use regulations if a community's SHI is below 10% and if at least 20 to 25% of the units in a given project under 40B have long-term affordability restrictions. Without this project, what could be constructed is a 40B between 236 and 535 rental units on one or two sites, or one subdivided site, or up to 944 owner-occupied units at between 15 and 24 sites, with no control over site choice. No development agreement would be included in those types of projects, and no zoning oversight would occur. So again, those things could happen if we continue to be under our 10% threshold for 40B, which this project, the Royal Crest project, enables us to exceed. Working in concert with the proposed inclusionary zoning bylaw, which is a separate article under this town meeting, the town will be able to exceed 10% and stay there if the proposed Royal Crest project is approved and constructed. So just very quickly, the inclusionary zoning bylaw essentially requires that certain multifamily developments include a certain percentage of deed-restricted affordable units. So we anticipate that the Royal Crest project will bring the town's SHI to approximately 10.5%. So therefore, we would be above our 10% threshold. It would protect us from further 40B developments. And hopefully, if the inclusionary zoning bylaw were also approved, that would keep us over the 10% threshold, is our thought, because it would require any further multifamily housing projects to include affordable units within those developments. So what does affordable mean? 97 units in the proposed Royal Crest project will be reserved for households at or below 80% of the area median income. So as shown below, and our area includes the towns listed in the top of this chart, if you're a household size of, say, just one person, you can make up to $57,650 and be eligible to rent a unit in the 40B component of the affordable units that are going to be produced. If you're a household of, say, 4, you can make an annual family income of $82,300. And you can see all the other income limits on down the line up to a household size of 8. Now I will introduce Selectwoman Laura Bates to discuss the fiscal impacts to the project.
Actually, it's back to me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just want to thank everybody who's still hanging out with us here. I know this is a lot of information, but we do appreciate you becoming educated about projects that are before town meeting, no matter how you're going to vote. We do enjoy having the debate at town meeting, and we encourage everyone to come and have a respectful conversation, and we remind you that it's May 17th at 6:30. The fiscal impact report is one of the most important things that we do when we are considering a project. And so the developer produces the initial fiscal impact report, which is then peer-reviewed extensively by a town-selected consultant. As part of that fiscal impact report, we go above and beyond what many other communities do, and we require interviews not only with police, fire, and the schools, but also with our veterans agent, staff at the senior center, our library administration, and our youth center director. And our focus is really on our population-sensitive parts of the budget. If we have more people, how does that impact our budget? And we want to know that because it's really important later down the line when we go to negotiate development agreements, when we go to make determinations about whether or not a development is a positive or a negative for the community. Ryan Schrute, I know you had some questions on the fiscal impact report. We're going to send you the link so you can compare the numbers right in the report. What you're looking for is right on page 4, so we'll send that along to you. Thank you for your question. Today, as I mentioned earlier, Royal Crest is the largest taxpayer in the town of North Andover with a bill of $1.6 million. However, it also costs the town between $2 million and $3.2 million a year, which results in a net negative fiscal impact, meaning that Royal Crest annually is costing the town between $469,000 to $1.58 million. If the project is improved and fully built out after the 8 to 10 years phasings, we will be seeing revenue of $6.7 million and have a net positive fiscal impact of $2.1 million to $4.3 million. This projected revenue number takes into account not only property taxes, but also meals tax, vehicle excise tax, hotel tax, and personal property tax. We also spent a lot of time just looking at the impact on the schools. At the time of the fiscal impact report, there were 213 children who are enrolled in the North Andover Public Schools and living at Royal Crest. I'll mention, and I said it before, there's been a lot of change at that apartment complex. At some points, we've had 160 students. At other points, we've had 260 students. Our population is constantly changing. The consultants have concluded that the proposed Royal Crest development at full build-out would house between 194 and 302 students, a range of a net loss of 19 students to a net gain of 89 students. It's important to note the town has accounted for this growth in their planning for Facilities Master Plan 2. We commissioned 2 studies to best understand not just the impact of Royal Crest on the town of North Andover, but also just to study the school enrollment generally as we prepared for our Facilities Master Plan 2 process. You can go, thanks, Andrew. We didn't commission these studies because we don't want to welcome new families to North Andover. Actually, quite the opposite. We wanted to fully understand the impact of any new development so that we could plan for it. And we take that responsibility very seriously because the fiduciary duty to manage the finances and budgets of the town falls squarely on our shoulders. If you review the data in the two reports, you can see that the town's birth rate has decreased and will continue to decrease, that the population growth has predicted to slow over the next decade, that we're estimating 56 students from the East Mill Pond Building, Minko, and Avalon, 357 units total, that Princeton Properties, which is fully built out at 196 units, estimated 13 students and only has 8 enrolled. We'll remember that the students will be distributed amongst all grades and come in multiple phases over 8 to 10 years. When you have new students come in, they're not all in 3rd grade. They're not all in 4th grade. They're distributed amongst the 13 grades that we educate here in the town of North Andover. And we know that these students will come in 2026, 2029, 2031, and 2032, meaning they're going to be generated in small groups. The phasing nature of this project allows the student impact to be spread over almost a decade. And that helps us maintain the consistency in student enrollment that Assistant Superintendent Maley has shown in all of his charts as we've gone through the Facilities Master Plan 2 process. Our population trends and extrapolation of future student population have held steady. If you look at this chart, you can see that historically, we've had 35 students a year. The two reports that we had done show that we'll continue to have around 35 students a year right through 2030 and beyond. One of the things that the fiscal impact really dug into was public safety. You can see that we expect 667 new calls for police, 141 new calls for fire, and 219 new calls for EMS. And I will add that this was based on the January program, so it may be a little bit inflated, but that's okay. We know that police calls cost between $360 to $720 a call, and we know that fire department calls range from $1,678 a call to $3,356 a call. In the peer-reviewed fiscal impact analysis shows that the town public safety costs will increase from $120,000 to $360,000 per year for public safety calls. And that is taken into account when they determined that it will be a net positive for us with revenue. We thought about this a little bit, as we're going through the process. It's about a 20% increase for calls. It's about 1,000 more calls. What would you need? What would it show? If you look at that 120,000 at 360,000, it looks like about 1.5 to 4.5 new public safety personnel. Based on the population demands that we've seen over the past 10 years, that seems accurate. One new public safety employee with benefits is approximately $80,000. And Patrick Bateman, I received your question asking about the police and what our best guess would be for current annual staffing and other costs. And do North Andover Police have to police certain Merrimack College campus calls, or can Merrimack campus police handle all the issues? This year, for the first time since the police chief and fire chief started with the forces, we are adding new public safety personnel in both divisions. And we're very proud and excited about this initiative. We know we're going to need more. We know we'll need that 1.5 to 4.5. We might need it even without the Royal Crest project, but we also know that we're going to have a revenue source and new growth from this project that's going to allow us to grow the force as it needs to be. We're going to talk about the development agreement a little bit later, but I've said before that one of the most exciting parts about the development agreement for me is having Merrimack College at the table with the administration and the police chief to talk about noise, nuisance, and public safety issues for the first time. There are times when it's appropriate for Merrimack College police officers to handle situations on campus or in their buildings. But there are other situations where the town must respond and does respond. And this tool is going to allow us all to do our jobs better. As far as sewer, all of the proposed buildings will discharge sanitary sewer via new gravity lines and connect to the existing 15-inch municipal sewer main that runs northerly along Route 114, which is ultimately going to the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. The development agreement studies funds a study of the sewer system, and under the development review process, the planning board will peer review the sewer and water design. For water infrastructure, the project will include all new water distribution infrastructure designed and installed to the North Andover Water and Sewer Department standards. It will be fed via the existing 12-inch main along Route 114. The proposed infrastructure will include new mains within the roadways and associated domestic and fire protection services to the buildings with valves and appurtenances as required. The estimated water demand for the full build-out of the project is 173,823 gallons per day, based on a 10% increase over the estimated sewer flows to account for non-consumptive uses. The project will utilize low-flow fixtures within the buildings to further reduce water demand, and as noted in the preliminary stormwater analysis, the project will also consider opportunities for the irrigation systems to draw from harvested rainwater supplies where feasible, in order to reduce the water demand. The town commissioned a study at the planning board's request to review water capacity. It determined at the conclusion of the proposed project, the town will be below its permitted withdrawal allowance. As part of the town's Water Management Act permit renewal, the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation forecasted the town's water needs out to 2034. Water needs were forecasted based on Mass DEP's regulations for residential gallons per capital day usage and unaccounted for water, which are 65 MGD and 10% respectively. Water needs were also forecasted based on prior pumping trends. Of the two forecasting methods, the water needs forecasted based on prior trends yielded the higher average annual withdrawal. So at the end of the day, we can see right through 2034, we will not be near our permitted withdrawal allowance. For stormwater, we have proposed conditions which will include subsurface storage. We saw some of these in the video that the developer presented, with below-grade stormwater detention for peak rate and volume mitigation, at-grade systems for wetland mitigation enhancement, and constructed wetlands. If the master development plan is approved at town meeting, a complete stormwater management design would be developed for each component of the project and submitted to the planning board as part of the development project plan review and the Conservation Commission as part of their notice of intent. The town's consultant peer-reviewed the stormwater management improvements at a conceptual level to ensure that the regulatory requirements will be satisfied. The project will be required to undergo all applicable state and local permitting processes for approvals to proceed with the redevelopment. The redevelopment is currently anticipated to be implemented over the course of 6 major construction phases, and each phase will need to ensure that the stormwater management improvements associated with that phase development will be implemented prior to or as part of that phase. And as we saw during the video, there has been some proposed wetland mitigation, which will be furthered out with Conservation Commission moving forward, and some of that is shown as drawn on this chart. Talked a little bit about the project phasing, and you can see here that there is 6 phases starting in 23 and going all the way out to 31. Phase 1 is the town green, the student housing building and associated surface parking lot, the 40B and some of the market rate housing. Phase 2 is the 55 and over age restricted building, 3 of the market rate multifamily buildings. Phase 3 is the hotel and associated parking and utility infrastructure. Phase 4 is the office building. Phase 5 includes another one of the market rate multifamily buildings, and Phase 6 is the 199 townhomes. This chart basically shows what their phasing plan would be like, what existing units would remain on site, and the total units that would remain on site for each of the phases. So as you know, since we are phasing this project, there'll be a mix of old construction and new construction at once. At the Select Board's request, they have given us a resident relocation plan. They have agreed to retain a relocation coordinator. The units in the building slated to be demolished in the first phase would be held upon turnover. A portion of the units in the building slated to remain, those that would not be demolished in the initial phases, would have those units held upon turnover for relocation purposes. So people who would be displaced by phase 1 would be able to move into the units that are being held in phase 2 buildings. Air Communities relocation program for residents who choose that program. What that means is that Air and AMCO own other buildings and communities in other places in Massachusetts as well as New Hampshire, and they would help people relocate to those if they so chose. There would be attrition of students in Merrimack College, which means that we know that 135 units would be available pretty quickly. And existing residents will have the first option to move into the newly built units pending any contrary laws, meaning that the 40B, if they weren't eligible for it, they would not be able to move into those ones, but would be able to move into other ones. This chart summarizes some of the density that we have here in town. So Royal Crest would be 17 units per acre. Minko, which was part of a public-private partnership, which is the Minko Apartments plus the senior center next door, is 42 units per acre. Princeton Properties, which is on Osgood Street and has just finished construction, is 21 units per acre. Avalon, which is in the Mills on High Street, is 18 units per acre. And Berry Farm, which is a 40B project on Turnpike and Berry Street, is 8 units per acre. Okay, next I'm going to turn this over to Chairwoman Bates for the development agreement. I just wanted to say one thing before she took the reins on that. All of the slides we just showed you about the project impacts are all things that we thought about and talked about when we negotiated the development agreement. And it wasn't just those. It was also all of the letters that residents wrote to the planning board and all of the comments that were submitted and the planning board meetings that we attended or watched. All of that comes into play when we're developing, thinking about, and negotiating development agreements. And so, I think that that's a really important point, that it's really 18 months, 2 years, and some people will tell you more than that, of background and work that goes into negotiating these terms and mitigation. And I think that that's just an important point as we transition into that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Melissa. And I agree. I think that's an excellent point, that these 2 development agreements are really a product of listening to the community and, like you said, over 2 years of listening to meetings and comments and trying to mitigate some of the impacts that this project will have on the town. So there are 2 development agreements. The first one includes Trinity, AMCO, and the town of North Andover. The second one includes the town of North Andover and Merrimack College. The agreements only go into effect in the event that the proposed mixed-use overlay zoning district and associated zoning map are approved at the 2020 annual town meeting. And these agreements total at least $9,920,000 and as much as $10,920,000, with the potential, for more, if the population of the development is more than projected, and that would come in the means of a per capita mitigation. So the first thing that we'll talk about is the traffic and what is in the development agreement for that. And the developer has established traffic monitoring and reporting program to determine if the traffic is consistent with the traffic studies. There's $1 million that will be placed in escrow and held by the town at the issuance of the first building permit. And 12 months after that certificate of occupancy is issued for each phase of the project, the developer will then pay the town $10,000 to conduct a confirmatory traffic study. So they will look back and make sure that what was studied is actually what's happening. And if that volume of the traffic is in excess of those projections, then the town can use that $1 million for traffic mitigation. And in the event that these funds are not used at the completion of the project, or 12 years from the issuance of the first building permit, they will be divided equally between the town and the developer. And to continue with traffic, the Transportation Demand Management Program, specific trip reduction goals and measurable initiatives, bicycle parking, half is covered. The developer will pay population portion of the town's assessment to the MVRTA. There will be 2 bus routes included, one which connects the project to Andover or Lawrence train stations, and one with express service to Boston. And they will also become a member of the Merrimack Valley Transportation Management Association. Next is a big one. We've heard a lot about pedestrian safety, and because of that, there will be another $1 million put into escrow that will be held by the town, and it will fund pedestrian safety enhancements as recommended by the pedestrian safety studies conducted by the town. These studies will be commissioned 12 months after the completion and occupancy of the first phase, and 12 months after the completion and occupancy of the second phase, and after the completion of the hotel, if not encompassed in the above 2 studies. If any pedestrian safety issues arise requiring enhancements, the developer shall utilize the escrow funds to make improvements. And this is including but not limiting to the crossing guards at peak times and design and funding of a portion of the pedestrian footbridge. And again, at the end of the 12 years from issuance of the first building permit, if there are funds left, it'll be split between the developer and the town. So we had a question from Mike Consoli. He asked if that he's heard from elected officials and during the planning board, select board combined meetings talk about a pedestrian bridge, and that there are triggers that would make Mass DOT install the bridge. The message has gone around and around, and now many proponents are talking about the bridge. It's my understanding that Mass DOT is not going to install a bridge, and that there is no trigger, which would make them and even Merrimack College. They've applied for a grant, and there's nothing imminent about the bridge being installed. He would like clarification on the bridge and where the money will come from if it's deemed that we need one. So again, in the development agreement, there is a metric for 3 pedestrian safety studies which would help educate the town and the state on whether a pedestrian footbridge is needed based on the data. In the event that the data showed the need for enhanced pedestrian safety measures beyond the new intersection, there would be $1 million for the town, college, and developer to start the process. Additionally, the college and town have applied for a federal earmark for the pedestrian footbridge in the amount of $5 million. In the event that the earmark is approved, the developer and college would need to fund any additional required funding. The town would not fund any portion of the footbridge. The next portion of the development agreement is in regards to open space. The developer shall permanently restrict the use of the perimeter of its project as open space, buffer, vegetation, and walking trails. The developer will fund a walking trail study with connections to the common and downtown in the amount of $20,000. The developer designs, builds, and maintains a walking trail for pedestrians to access the Franklin School in the amount of $100,000. There are many community partnership portions of this development agreement, and I'll run down them quickly. There's $550,000 for water improvements, $50,000 for sewer capacity analysis and redesign of sewer flow, $850,000 for parks and fields improvement and creation as dictated by the 2020 Fields Master Plan, $500,000 community policing initiative, $650,000 for the design of Fire Station 2, $150,000 to the Senior Center, $200,000 to the Stevens Memorial Library Bookmobile, $500,000 for the design of the Youth Center addition, $3.5 million to the Franklin School gym, increased classroom space and other improvements, and $300,000 downtown property improvement grant funding. So as you can see, the development agreement has a wide range of residents and programs and facilities that it would touch. Next, we'll move on to the per capita mitigation payment. From the 5th year of total occupancy to the 10th year of the total occupancy, the developer shall make a per capita payment for every resident that exceeds the estimated number of residents in the fiscal impact report, which is 2,016 residents. This payment shall be calculated by dividing the budget minus local aid by the population of the town. Next, we'll move on to housing and other terms. In the event that any parcel other than a residence hall become owned by Merrimack College or any other tax-exempt organization, taxes must be continued to be paid for a period of 10 years following the conveyance. At least 15% of the net new units must be affordable and shall remain affordable in perpetuity. The developer agrees that it shall maintain a sufficient number of units to ensure that the town meets the 40B housing requirements at the time of the permit issue, and the developer is responsible for the town's obligation under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. Next, that concludes the developer agreement, and now we'll move on to the Merrimack College development agreement. And I think it's important to note that right now we do not have any agreements with Merrimack, and this is, again, bringing them to the table, that we're having conversations, and they are stepping to the table. So upon certificate of occupancy for residence halls, Merrimack College shall make a $1.65 million payment to an escrow account controlled by the town of North Andover. Merrimack College has made some requests that we draw down that amount in a manner to have a minimum of 10 years of drawdowns, that the funds be used for investments in education, public safety, and/or town infrastructure, and that an annual letter be submitted to the college outlining the spending. To continue on with the Merrimack College development agreement, and to Melissa's point, I think these are even more important than the money that they're giving to the town. There will be a committee of Merrimack College, the town, and the developer to develop guidelines that the town shall adopt related to noise and nuisances. Consistent with state law, the town and the college shall enter into an MOU regarding responsibilities, communication, and reporting of public safety incidents. All residence halls at Royal Crest shall have a responsible party on the premises 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who shall be responsible for contacting appropriate parties in the event of emergencies. And all students will be required to undergo safe crossing training, and a section about safe crossing shall be added to the handbook. And how do Royal Crest and Facilities Master Plan 2 intersect? And I've said time and time again, there are 3 projects that are coming together right now: Royal Crest, Facilities Master Plan 2, and the 114 corridor. And these are a few points that show you how they intersect. Royal Crest, in the development agreement and the increased tax revenue, will advance Facilities Master Plan 2. It will fund the design for Fire Station 2 and the Youth Center. It frees up $1,150,000 to be used on other aspects of this plan. It funds $3.5 million to be used towards Franklin School Gym addition and the increased classroom space and other improvements. The freed up funding plus the development agreement plus the planned appropriations is $6 million, a decade earlier than planned for the Franklin School. We hear a lot of talk about wanting Facilities Master Plan 2 to happen faster, and this is one way that we can make it happen faster. The increased new growth means the town has the options to either accelerate later projects or decrease the burden on current taxpayers. And now I'll move it back to Melissa, who is going to talk about what happens if we stay as is versus the proposed projects.
Thank you. So this slide just quickly runs through a comparison of the status quo versus the proposed. I'm a visual person, so I like looking at things this way. So the units currently, 588. Proposed, there'll be 1,058 plus 206 dorms. The acres don't change. The current Royal Crest is 76.18 acres. The new Royal Crest would be 76.18 acres. The population currently is 1,600. The population proposed would be 2,013 plus 824 students. The bedroom count currently is 1,284 bedrooms. The proposed bedroom count is 2,319 bedrooms. There is currently 0 affordable units. There would be 97 affordable units. Currently, no units at Royal Crest are applied to the town's subsidized housing inventory. There would be 385 units applied to the town's subsidized housing inventory. We currently receive $1,594,938 from Royal Crest in tax revenue. We would receive $6,759,826 in tax revenue. The net fiscal impact for the current project is negative $469,222 to negative $1,586,758. The net positive impact for the proposed Royal Crest project is $2,121,668 to $4.3 million. Student housing currently is 163 units. Student housing proposed is 206 units. Age-restricted housing currently is 0. Age-restricted housing proposed is 35. School-aged children currently, 213. School-aged children, when we did the fiscal impact report, is 213. School-aged children for the proposed Royal Crest would be between 194 and 302. The floor area ratio is currently 0.24. It would be 0.81 with the parking structure. We currently do not have a development agreement. We would have a development agreement. We currently do not have compliance with Massachusetts General Law 40B. If this project passed, we would have compliance with Massachusetts General Law 40B. The current Royal Crest is not sprinklered. The new project would have sprinklers. The current Royal Crest has 54.6 acres of open space. The proposed Royal Crest would have 46.5 acres of open space. The buffer around the site is currently 12 acres. The proposed buffer around the site would be 19.2 acres. The pavement within the resource area buffers is 5.9 acres currently and would be 3 acres in the proposed project. The wetland resource areas currently are 3.8 acres and would be 4 acres in the proposed project. One thing we hear a lot is, if not, then what? And unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball, and I wish I could answer that question. But I did want to offer one scenario, and so Ron Fajan and Jeff King both said, what happens if this doesn't pass town meeting? And so this is, we did talk earlier a little bit, Andrew, in the affordable housing section about what could happen with 40B, either on this site or throughout the town. But this is something that could happen on this site if Merrimack decided to vacate. So it doesn't pass town meeting. We know there's currently approximately between 800 and 850 Merrimack college students occupying the apartments at Royal Crest. There's 135 rented directly by the college, and it's estimated that another 50 to 110 are rented by students. So I assume 50 when completing the analysis. Of the units occupied directly by the college, 26 are 3 bedrooms and 109 are 2 bedrooms. It's unknown the unit count of those rented directly by college students, and due to that, I conducted this analysis using a range. So 1.8 people per unit is typically what we use for 2 bedrooms and 0.812 for 3 bedrooms. And so we know Merrimack would vacate, at least 185 units become available, which would bring in 333 new residents with 50 to 82 new students. There would be no increase in revenue, no development agreement, but there would be an additional negative budget effect. And so I used the exact same metric that we used to calculate the existing municipal costs, the projected municipal costs under the proposed project, and then under this scenario. And we know that we would see a total increase of anywhere from $182,424 to $278,904, which means that our new net negative fiscal impact would increase to negative $647,000 to negative $1.86 million. So it would become more of a net negative for the community if Merrimack decided to vacate the parcel, build on their own property, and those became available. We had a question from Mr. Consoli, and it said, lastly, there are rumors that if this gets voted down the 17th, that Merrimack College will buy the whole lot of land and that North Andover will receive no tax revenue. In the meetings that I've seen, Merrimack has indicated nothing of the kind. Instead, they have said they will build in their current property if this gets voted down. After what happened with the 510, 530 bypass, I don't necessarily believe what they tell us, but have our officials had discussion with Merrimack to know what their intentions are? Do they have any pending permits to build in their current land? Can they purchase that land and do whatever they want with it? Merrimack has indicated in public meetings that in the event this project does not prevail, they plan to build their residence hall on their own property on 114. They currently do not have any permits to build a residence hall. Under the Dover Amendment, if the building inspector determines that the applicant has satisfied the requisite two-part showing, which is that it's a primary educational use, then the Dover Amendment applies. And the only zoning ordinance or bylaws that a city or town may enforce against the proposed project are reasonable regulations regarding the bulk and height of structures, yard size, lot area, setback, open space, parking, and building coverage requirements. Other zoning regulations regarding, for example, density, screening, traffic, and signage are not enforceable as against a Dover protected project. I hope that helps answer your question. I'm going to turn things back to Laura to talk a little bit about what some other boards and committees have reported and recommended.
Thank you, Melissa. So we've had 5 of the committees in town weigh in on Royal Crest. And first I'll talk about our board, the Select Board. So we voted favorable action on both articles. That was a 4-1 vote, so 4 members were in favor and 1 was against. Next, I'll move on to the Planning Board, and they have unfavorable action. However, they have 3 members that were against the project and 2 members that were in favor of the project. Our Finance Committee, who really delves down into the numbers of our budget and any projects that come across for the town, they unanimously voted favorable action on those 2 articles. We also have a Master Plan Implementation Committee, and what they did is they take a look at all the strategies that the master plan wants to implement. They picked out the strategies that they felt applied to this project, and they do a wonderful job of doing an Excel spreadsheet. And so of the 20 strategies that they felt applied to Royal Crest, they feel that 15 will have a positive impact on the master plan, 2 are not applicable, and 3 are neutral in nature and have no positive or negative impact, and they had 0 that would have a negative impact. And finally, our Affordable Housing Trust voted unanimous favorable action on both articles. So I want to thank everybody for joining us and for staying with us and for all the hard work for our town departments that have worked for over 2 years on this project. The back and forth between the developers and the committees and listening and giving feedback to the developer, to Merrimack, and finally getting to this point that we are bringing this to you at town meeting on May 17th at 6:30 at the Field House. And again, if you have questions, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.